Okay, where were we? So we had our WAMP server going, and I'm going to go to my www directory, and I'm going to start this, and I'm going to go to localhost server side. Okay. And where were we? So I was just explaining how. Okay, so PHP uses the $sign to indicate variables. Okay, so let's say I said number 1, I could say equals 5. And just like JavaScript, we end all of our lines with a semicolon. Okay, or then we could say number 2 equals, this is not a number. So PHP will just accept whatever you stick in the variable. So whether you put a number in or a string, it'll just accept it. Okay? So now what we can do is we can echo these variables. We can include them in our echo statement. So I could say, hello world number 1. Okay? Now we have the variable. So it works just like JavaScript, where we can interleave string literals and variables. Okay, same with this. We could say, we could add in here. So I'll add it. Let's add in another echo. We'll say echo, and then we'll add in a paragraph. Okay, and we'll say number 2. Okay, there you go. So aside from the $sign, variables work exactly the same as they do in JavaScript. The only difference, remember, is that this stuff is happening on the server's computer, not yours. Okay? Okay. So if we could do arithmetic. I'll show you just quickly. Number 3 equals 6, and number 4 equals number 1 plus number 3. So what will number 4 equal? Right, because it's going to take these two numbers and add them up. And then if I put 4 here, same thing. Okay? Okay, so variables. Pretty easy, right? So let's do this. Let's do loops now. Okay? So loops. Let's do a for loop. So we have for, just exactly the same. So far, exactly the same as JavaScript. So the syntax differs a little bit because of how we define the variable, but the order and what each thing is exactly the same way. Is exactly the same. So what's the first thing? What's the first section of a for loop? What is that? What does that represent? Yeah, the counter, right? What the counter variable starts at. So in PHP, we say $I equals 0. Okay? And then it's the same thing, semicolon, and then $I. So what does this one represent? Yeah, this is the condition. If this condition is true, the loop will keep iterating. So we'll say, while I is less than 100, and then we'll say $I plus plus. And that will increment I every time. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put the echo inside the for loop. Oh, there we go. And we get a big loop. Okay? And instead of number 4, let's put in I. Just because. Now, right? Now we could redo our 99 bottles of beer on the wall assignment really easily, right? Okay? So there are loops. We also have while. So so we could do the whole for loop in the same way. We could say counter equals 0, and then we'll say while counter is less than 100, And then inside here we could say echo counter, and then counter plus plus. So this does exactly the same thing as this does. Okay? Here we go. Right. Okay. So I could put it in some, what I could do here is, so the way we concatenate, what does concatenate mean again? Yeah, combining two things. The way we concatenate in PHP is using the dot. So we could say, we could make this an H2, right? And a closing H2. So see how I'm mixing PHP with HTML? So I'm using string, I'm putting HTML in my string literals and then mixing in a variable. Okay? See? So now it's styled. And then if we view the page source, here's all our markups. Okay? Okay. And then if statements. If statements work exactly like JavaScript does. Okay? So we'll say if counter is greater than 5, then echo greater than 5. Okay? Oops. What? Less than... Oh yeah, okay. It could be anything. You could put anything there. You could say equals greater than or not equals. Well, it'll eventually be 101, right? Or it'll be 100, right? So you could say this equals 100. Then say equals 100. Okay. There we go. Okay. Okay, so keeping that in mind, what I want to show you now. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at sessions. Okay, so let me just call up my notes. Actually, maybe I'll just do it from here. Okay. Okay. So, one thing let's talk about cookies for a second. I'm sure you've heard of cookies before. Okay. Cookies are a name-value pair stored in a browser. It's text information only, okay? And I think some people get a little afraid of cookies for some reason. They think they're a security risk. They aren't really. So think of a cookie as this. A cookie is a little bit of text information that a web server, can store on your client machine, right? So you might, let's say you've set up a web page to look a certain way, okay? So that server could use cookies to keep track of you. So when you come back to the page, it knows it's you and that you want this certain scheme, right? But cookies, you can't be hacked. People can't get access to information through cookies. And so what has happened is sometimes people disable cookies. So really you can't, it's almost like the Flash conundrum again, where because some people may not have them, you may not want to use the technology at all. Okay? So, let's look at sessions. Okay, so remember I said sessions are a way that PHP allows you to maintain the state between pages, because HTTP is a stateless protocol, right? Once it makes the request and receives the response, that's it. It doesn't keep track of anything else. Okay? So what you have to enable something else called sessions. Okay? And sessions allow the server to keep track of the client. Okay? So let's do this. So the first thing that we have to do, actually these notes won't be very good. Let's go back here. Let's just do the code. So the first thing, whenever we want to use sessions now, okay, so basically if we want someone to log into our website, or that's primarily what I've used sessions for. You can store anything in sessions, really, like any text data, but basically I can't think of another reason why. Because this is how it's going to work. Your username and password will be stored on the database somewhere. Okay? Using PHP, okay, so using forms that we've learned, we're going to have our JavaScript form, and our JavaScript form is going to pass our data to a PHP form, like our username and our password. It's going to send that to our MySQL table, and it's going to say, is this the right password for this user? Right? Or do they match? And then you'll get a response, yes or no. If the response is yes, you will set a session variable, like someone is logged in, and then the web page will treat the user as if they're logged in. Right? That's basically how the logic is going to work. So we're using the two things that PHP does, which is connect to our database and maintain sessions. Okay, to essentially allow someone to log in. Okay? So, we always, whenever we start a session, we have to type this command session start right at, it has to be the very first thing that happens on our PHP page. Otherwise, if we don't do that, session start, not sessions. Okay? And you should see, it should turn blue. Or if you're Dreamweaver, it might be a different color. Okay? That means we're telling the web server that we're going to start a session. We want to set and use session variables. Okay? So, let's do this. So I'm going to do two separate pages. Where's my, I'm going to go back to here, back to here, back to here, back to here, and server side. Okay, so I'm going to make another page called page2.php, okay? And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to edit it, and I'm going to create a PHP code script, and I'm going to say session start. Okay? So I have index with session start and page 2 with session start. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use what's called a super global variable. Okay, in PHP. There's a couple of different examples of these. The way we access it is we say $, session all caps, open and close square brackets, single quotes inside the square bracket, and then inside the quotes is our variable name. So this works like just like almost any other variable, except that the variables are accessible across different pages. Okay? So we're going to say, let's say number 1. So I can show you the examples. And I'm going to make number 1. No, that's going to be confusing actually. Let's make it number 5. And we'll make it equal to 99. Okay? And we'll save that. Okay, so if I go over to page 2, so let's say here I've defined a session variable, and I've defined a regular variable. So if I go over to page 2 and I say echo number 1. Now, so I've defined number 1 is equal to 5. So let's say the first thing I go to is I go to index. Okay, and so it's defined number 1. And now I go to page 2. Okay, see it says I get an error. It says undefined variable. Okay, because when I make just regular variables, they're not accessible across pages. They're only accessible within pages. Okay, but now I'm going to take this session number 5 and I'm going to copy it here. I'm going to, instead of echoing number 1, I'm going to echo session number 5. Okay, so again, first I'm going to go to index. I'm going to refresh. So I've set the session variable, and then I'm going to go to page 2. Look at that. So did everyone just see what happened there? So I passed data between the web pages by using the web server as an intermediary. So my one page copied up my session variable, stores it in the server, and then my second page then is able to retrieve that. So I've essentially passed data between web pages. Okay, and before now you didn't know how to do that. Okay, so even it looks pretty simple, but it's actually it's big. This is big. Okay, okay. So oh, so here's one thing we could do. Let's do. Remember, they don't do this anymore. It's sort of old-fashioned. Remember, they had page counters. Let's do that, right? So let's in index 1. Let's create. We'll call it session page views. Okay, and page views. How are we going to do this? Can we start from? Let's see. Oh, okay. Here's what we do. So, because I was just thinking, the first page is going to have to set it to be 1. Okay. So we have to use an if. Okay. So we're going to say if, and then we're going to use the function called isSet. So that's going to see if a variable has been given a value yet. So we're going to say if this, if page views, and then so we're going to put that into isSet. Okay. And then we have our brackets. So if it's set, all we're going to do is take page views and increment it by 1. Okay. Else, we're going to set page views to equal 1. Okay. And then I'm going to echo this page has been viewed. Okay. And then I'm going to create a space and a dot, and I'm going to say $_session bracket bracket quote quote page views. Okay. And then I'm going to finish my sentence. I'm going to say dot quote quote has been viewed 50 times. Okay. So let's copy this into our page 2. Okay. So every time I view either page 1 or page 2, it's going to, so this page has been viewed 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times. Now if I go to index, same thing, 5 times. And if I go back here, now it's, and then back, and then back, and then back, and then back, and then back. It keeps track, right? It's maintaining the state across pages. Okay? So that's That's key. That's very, very key. Okay. What do we want to do now? Session. So, okay, let's do a quick login script. Okay, we're going to do an actual script now. So, and this is, we're almost going to be going end to end, fully end to end that you would need for a real website. But I don't know, we'll see if we have enough time to do the database stuff tonight. Okay, so we'll save this as PHP stuff. And we'll reopen index because I'm going to clobber it. Okay, so I'm going to delete all this and we'll just put in our regular HTML. Okay, and we'll have our body, and we'll have our body. Okay, and okay, so we're going to have our form, and we'll close that form, and we're going to give it an action, and this is going to be a PHP script. So we're going to call it login.php. Okay, and we're going to use the method post, exactly, because we don't want our username and password to be shown on the URL. Okay, so then we're going to get a name and email. Okay, and we're going to use input type equals text, and then we're going to say name equals name. Okay, and then we'll just copy this, and we will make this email. Okay. Actually, no, let's make this more real. Let's make this password and this password. And for now, we'll just leave it text so you can see what I'm typing. Okay? And then down here, we're going to have input type equals submit. Yep. And that's it. Okay. So now, what we want to do is we're going to go over here, and I'm going to create my login script. So this is going to be the script that takes the data from the form and checks to make sure it's okay. So we're going to call this login.php, and we're going to edit it. So we're going to put our PHP tags at the top here. Okay, so now let's just make sure this is working. So for now we'll just say form submitted. Okay? So let's go to our page, and we can type this in, and we'll go to here, and now form submitted. Okay? So what we're doing, at least now we're going from the form page to our handling script. That's so far so good. Okay? So now what we can do is let's see if we can echo out what has been passed to us by the form. Okay? So we use, to access the session variables, we use the super global variable session. So we can access variables passed through post by accessing the super global variable post. So what we do is we say $_post, and then bracket bracket, quote quote, and then inside we give it the name of the name. Okay, so let's echo this. Oops. Oh, home, echo, and braces. Okay, so now let's try it again. We'll go back here. ASDF. There we go. ASDF. Okay, so now let's do it one more time for password, just to make sure that's coming correctly. There we go. Okay, so now we have access to the name and password. So let's say we have a really small database, okay? And only one person can log in. And so the name is Carmen, and the password equals password. Oops. We need to put those in quotes. Okay? So I think we'll probably have time. So what we'll do at the end of today is I'm going to switch this out with real database code. Yep. Yes. If what? Yep. It's absolutely case sensitive. You could make it case insensitive by using, I think there's a string compare function that'll ignore case. But if you just say equals, 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 it's case sensitive. Okay? So now what we'll do is we'll say, okay, what? Oh yeah. So now we're going to have our login logic. So we're going to say if, or so let's do this. Instead of echoing, I'm going to create a variable called name from form equals. And here I'm going to create one called password from form equals. Okay? And then I have the actual name and password. Okay? So now I'm going to say, so what of the three pillars, what pillar do I need to use now to check if the username and if, right? So I have to say if name from form equals name, okay? Then, so we've matched the name now, but we need to do one more thing. So now I'm going to put an if inside an if. So, okay, if the name doesn't equal, then we'll echo out a message. We'll say, sorry, your username does not exist. Okay? But if the name does exist, what else do we have to do? Yeah, check the password now. So now we have to say if password from form equals password, then echo you've logged in. Okay? And what else do I want to do now that we've just learned how to do it? We're going to set a session variable. Right? So we're going to say underscore session, bracket, bracket, quote, quote. We'll call it username equals name from form. Okay, and then up here, I just have to say session start. Okay? And then here I could say you've logged in. Welcome. Whoops. Welcome. Dot. And then I'll say this. Session variable. Okay? So let's try that now. So we'll go back to the form. The name is ASDF. Actually, let's get rid of this. And let's put this here in H1. So we'll style these. Okay. And so we'll refresh. Sorry, your username does not exist. Okay. So now I'll put in Carmen. Okay, so we didn't do one other thing. So if the name is equal, but the password is not, so if it is equal, then log them in. But if it's not, then we want to say, sorry, your password does not match. So we'll save that. Whoops, oh, what happened? Okay, so we'll go back to our main form. So Carmen ASDF submit. Sorry, your password does not match. Okay, now we'll go back here. Password. Submit. You've logged in. Welcome, Carmen. Now, let's do this. Let's go back to our index. So here in our body, we're going to inject some PHP. we can do that. We can put PHP. No, we can't. Yes, we can, because it's as long as it's index.php, we can put PHP in there. So we'll say PHP, and then we'll close it. I always notice how I always close things before I write in the middle. That's because if you forget the end, you can run into a lot of trouble, because you write a whole bunch of stuff and then you forget about the end, right? So I always finish it off. Okay, so what we can do, we'll say we're going to use the same stuff from before. I'm going to say I'm going to first check if the username has been set. So I'm going to go back here and say if username, my phone's died here. If username is set, then echo welcome. Whoops. Welcome space dot, and then I'm going to copy all this. Welcome username. Else echo please sign in. And let's make this H1. And we have to then concatenate H1 over here. And same with this. H1. H1. Okay. So it says please sign in. Okay. Oh, I didn't at the very top of the page, I'm going to put PHP session start and then close my PHP. Okay, at the very start. Because actually it's still it has me logged in from before. So let me actually use a different browser. Let me use Internet Explorer, because we don't have a button to log out yet, and we'll create a logout button. So I'm going to paste it here in Explorer, because if I use a different browser, the session is not maintained. Okay? Different session. So now it says please sign in. So if I put in the wrong name, sorry, your username does not exist. I put in the right name. Sorry, your password does not match. Carmen, password. You're logged in. Welcome, Carmen. Now if I go back, welcome, Carmen. Okay? So we've maintained the state between pages. Okay? And that's huge, right? That now you have the ability to, have dynamic web pages. Okay, that change depending on who's logged in. You could, create things like Twitter, like Facebook, like all those sites. They use sessions very heavily. Okay. Okay, let's do one more thing, which is we're going to create a log out button. So there's a couple of ways we can do it. We can destroy the session, which is probably the best way to do it. Let's do that. Where's my session notes? Okay, so we just say what we would do is create a new file called logout.php. Okay, and we're going to go in here, and then we're going to copy this, but instead of session start, we're going to say session destroy. What's going on? Session. Oh, because what did I mark? Well, we'll see if that works. It should work. Session destroy. Okay, let's try it. So we'll go here. I'm logged in. We'll go to log out. Session destroy. trying to destroy uninitialized session. Maybe we have to session start. Shouldn't matter. Okay. Aha. Okay, so if we go back, and then if we go to, so what we'll do is in index, we'll create a little anchor tag that goes to logout.php, and then, so we'll say logout, and then in login.php, or logout.php, we'll do the same thing. We'll do an echo. So echo href equals, okay, and then index.php. Now what did I call it? Yeah, see. Okay. So now we have this logout. So if I click here, we go to logout, and why did this work? Huh. Okay, but we have destroyed our session. I'm not sure why isn't this coming in. I guess it doesn't like after destroy session. I guess it just stops. Let's try this. Oh, it's there. Oh, I just didn't put in HTML. Okay. Okay. So, any questions right now about what sessions are? Right. So far, we've been working with variables in JavaScript, for example, and it's only maintained within pages. But now we know a way of maintaining variables across pages. Okay. So, the next thing that we're going to do, this will probably take us to the end of class, is we're going to connect PHP to MySQL. Okay? So, here's what we have to do. So, we need to use, so what I'm going to do is we're going to, so this here, we're going to switch out this hard-coded username and password for database code. That's actually going to, so we're going to comment this out. So in here, what we're going to do is connect to our database, run a query, and then go through our results. Okay? So here's how we do that. The first thing we do is we go to phpMyAdmin. And my password is just root with no password. Okay, so what we need to do is kind of like what we did for WordPress, is we need to create our database. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create a database. We'll call it server side, which is what we've been doing. Create. Okay? So now, we're going to go into server side, and we're going to create a new table called users. And the users column will have, let's say 5, or the users table will have 5 columns. Okay? So what's the first column always? ID. Okay? And we're going to make that primary and auto increment. Okay? So then we just have a couple of things. So we have username, and we have password, and we have email, and what else? That's probably enough. So do we need to delete that? No. So username, we're going to make varchar. We'll make it 500. Password, varchar. We'll make it 50. Email, we'll make it 500 in a varchar. Okay. So we're going to save. So we have users, and I'm going to insert one user for now. So I'm going to insert Carmen, and the password will be password, and email will be cbrange@gmail. Okay. So now I have a database with one table with one row. Okay? So the other thing I have to do is I have to create a user for the, remember we did this when we did WordPress. I have to create a user for the web server to use on the database. Right? Because the actual a person never actually interfaces with the database. They always interface with the database through HTML, through PHP. Right? There's those filters there. Okay? So what we have to do is we have to give our web server a username to make that connection to the database. Okay? So what we're going to do is I'm going to I want to users. So I'm going to click on users, and I'm going to add a user. The user is going to be called server side, and the host will be local, because in this case the web server and database server are on the same computer, the same physical machine. So the web server thinks that the database server is at localhost. Okay. Password, we'll use password, or let's use server side. Server side as the password. Okay. Then I want to add a user. So database with same name. Okay, I'm going to check all privileges and click go. Okay, so now what I need to do is associate my database with my user. So I'm going to go here, go to server side, check privileges, and now I'm going to type. Does it have edit privileges? Oh, so that, okay, good. My user has access to server side. Let's just go back there. Users. And edit privileges. And, okay. Server side. Well, I was just at this. Oh wait, okay, let's go to server side. Privileges. Okay, server side has privileges. Okay, so now what we have to do is in our PHP code, we have to create a connection to our database. Okay? And so what we do is we create a variable for our connection, and we can call it anything. Let's call it either, sometimes I call it connection, or DB is something that's good to call it. Basically anything, okay, that's related to connecting to the database. So I'm going to use a function called mysqli connect, okay? And then I'm going to pass a couple of things. First is the server address, which is localhost. Then the database user, which was server side. Then the database user password, which was also server side. Okay? So now I'm going to have an if statement. I'm going to say if mysqli connect error no, then we're going to echo a message failed to connect to database. Okay? Okay, so let's run that and see if I have to do any troubleshooting. Oops. Okay, line number 4. Oh, I see. Okay, so I have to actually put this back in because I'm using them later on, and so it's giving me errors. Okay, line 4. Okay, that's because I didn't go from here. Whoops. So if I go from here, whoops. Okay, so it seems like we've connected to the database successfully. We didn't get any error messages. Okay, that's a good thing. So we've connected to the database, and now that we have this connection, what can we do with it? Okay, well, the first thing, the main thing that we're going to be doing is either inserting records. So maybe if we have a register user form, that would insert a record into the database. But now, because we want to check what's already in there, we're going to do a select. Okay, so a select means pull data from the database. So what we're going to do is we're going to the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a variable called query. Okay, and so this query is going to be a string that represents our SQL command. Okay? And so what we want to do is let's go back here. Let's go back to our database, and we'll go to our server-side database, to our users table. And when I click on it, you see how this code up here? That's SQL code. So I can just copy this, go over to here, and paste it here, and we'll put it on one line. Okay? So this query means select all the rows from the table users and limit to 30 results. Okay? So now what we do is we're going to say result equals MySQL query, and then we're going to use the DB connection that we just created, and we're going to use the query that we just also created, and that's it for now. So let's run that and see if we get an error. I'll just leave that up for a second. Okay, so let's save that and run it. Okay, so no error messages thus far. So we seem to be doing okay. So now, what's going to happen is let's actually go back to our database and create one more row. Let's insert one more. So we'll insert a username Bob, password is Bob, email is bob@gmail.com. Okay? So we now have, so I'm going to go to browse. So we have 2 rows in our database now. Okay? So when it returns our data to us, it gives it to us in a list. And we have to iterate through that list. So what do you think are we going to use to iterate through that list? It's one of the 3 pillars. So iterate means just visit one at a time. So it's basically you're going to be returned, let's say, like a single column like this, right? And you could only, let's say your array contained the numbers 1 to 10. Okay? So in this case, you can only access each row one at a time. That's iterating through the list. So what we would do is we would use a loop. to iterate through. Okay? So, do you think, would we use a for loop or a while loop? Why do we use those, each one? Why do we use a for loop? Yeah, when you know the number. And while is when you're not sure. So which do you think? Exactly. So, while or for? But how do you know? Because maybe somebody else signed up. So it's while, because we don't know how many rows are in there, right? So we're going to say this. We're going to say while, and then we're going to create a variable called row, and row is going to equal MySQL I fetch array from our result. Okay? So what that basically means is while there are still more rows, we're going to put our row of data into a variable called row. Okay? So now what we'll do is we'll echo echo $row, bracket, quote, quote, and then we can put in the columns that we want to display. So if we go back to our database, so we have username, let's just say username for now. So we'll say username, echo username, and then we'll also echo a line break. Okay? So if all goes well, we should get a printout of Carmen and Bob from the database. Okay, so let's try it. Oops. Okay, parse. Syntax error. Expected a bracket on line 24. Okay, so I forgot one of these. Okay. So we go back. Oops, so I have to go back to my form. Submit. Oops. Boolean given. Hang on here. Huh. Let's see. Expect parameter 1. Boolean given on line 23. No, I didn't. So this... Oh, maybe there was a problem with this query. Okay, let's try this quickly. Echo result. From users. Was that our tick? Yeah? Because I copied it right out of here. Select star. Okay, hang on. Let's do this for a second. I'm just going to comment this out, track down the source of the error. Think that's a Boolean. So the problem is whatever is being put into this variable is not what it expects. Well, we'll just have to do a little Google search. Okay. So what could be the problem is maybe the connection didn't work, but your query is, okay, it's failing. Put this. Okay. Let's see why my query is failing. No database selected. What the heck? Oh. Okay. So in this line here, I forgot one thing. Okay? So that was I didn't pick our database because I picked the username and the password. What did I call the database? Server side, same thing. Okay, sorry about that. So one more parameter here, server side. Okay. So now, so see, it was giving me an error. It was saying no database selected. So that's what I had to do. Okay. Line 22. Line 22. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Save. And okay. There we go. Success. So see how we had just a little bit of struggling there because the connection to the database wasn't quite solid. So now watch this. Watch me. I can change my web page now without changing any code. Okay? So I'm going to go to my database. I'm going to insert a new row. And now I'm going to create Jane with Jane and jane@gmail.com. Go. Now if I go here and refresh, hey, Jane, right? So now this is the technology that enables user-generated content. Because you can go to a website, fill out a text box like your comment. I'm going to comment on this newspaper article. You hit select, it gets stored in a database. And then there is some code somewhere that is pulling everything out of that database and then just displaying it using a loop. Okay? So, I hope, this is a really simple example. I've dumbed it down just so you can see the nitty. Not dumbed it down, but I've removed all the excess stuff, right? Like, it doesn't look like much, but the ability that this stuff gives you is just tremendous. You can do so many things. So let's actually finish off our login thing. So let's make it actually log in. Okay. So I'm going to get rid of these variables. Okay. And what we're going to do is, so in this loop, right? It's going to visit all of the usernames, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, so if the current username equals the name from form, right? It's basically this logic down here, right? If row username equals name from form, then what we're going to do is we're going to check the password. So we can say, we'll copy this, right? Remember, row has access to all of our columns, right? So we could say password, okay? Then we'll say, so if the username from the database equals the username from the form, and if the password from the database equals the password from the form, then we'll say we'll set our session name right there. So I'm going to cut this and paste it in here. Okay, you've logged in. And then one other thing I have to do is I have to put this command break. So that'll kick us out of the loop. right? Because once we found Carmen and we matched the password, we don't need to search anymore. Okay? So as soon as we found the user, we're going to break, and that kicks us out of our for loop, even though there may be more things, or while loop, even though there may be more things. Okay? And then we're going to do one more thing and say is logged in. I'm going to create a variable, and I'm going to make this true. Okay? Because I only want one error message to be displayed. I don't want it to say, check your password, check your password, check your password, check your password for every user. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say this. So after it's finished through, if it hits here, so at the top I'm going to say is logged in equals false. So it starts off false. If it doesn't find anything, it's going to stay false. So I'm going to say if is logged in equals false, then I'm going to say echo please check your username or password. And we'll make this an H1. Okay, save that. And we'll save it. Okay, let's cross our fingers. So, let's say Carmen. We'll log in Carmen with the wrong password. Please check your username or password. Okay, so far so good. So Carmen had the password of password. Hey, we're logged in. Okay? So now we can go back. It's still going to say, so let's go to log out. Okay, we'll go back. So now, let's try logging in another user. So let's go here, and let's try logging in Bob. So he has username Bob, password Bob. So we'll go here, Bob, Bob. You've logged in. Welcome, Bob. And we go back here, welcome, Bob. Okay? So that's the real deal now, right? You can, these tools now, what I've showed you, I mean, I don't expect you guys to be experts, but now of all the stuff that I've showed you in this class, you could now go and make basically any website that exists with the stuff that up until now, right in this exact moment, you've basically learned not at all, but enough to get started. Okay, because now, what can we do now? Now we can actually interface with a real database. And I mean, this stuff I've only shown you the beginning, but it's just an extension of this stuff, right? So you can access a real database. You can, I haven't quite showed you how to insert. Maybe we have a little bit of time. Maybe we can go and do that. But again, it's an extension of what we've been learning. So you can interface with a database. Okay, you can log sessions. So you can keep track of. You can have someone log into your website, okay, and you can keep track of users on your website. So this means you could restrict content to certain users. Right? You could create a pay site, right? You could attach it to PayPal, and then only certain users are given access to certain bits of content, certain text, right? You could say, if user is of type paid, then display this. If user is of type guest, display this, right? So yeah, you could go forth and basically make a real website that actually does stuff that people will want to use. Okay? So any questions about the server-side technology that we looked at? Anything not 100% crystal clear? I know, like, don't expect to be able to go and just program this stuff, right? Really, if you wanted to do this at this point in your education, you would probably be okay to get a book. So get a book on PHP. Let's see. Let's look up a book right now. There's even some you could probably for free. These are fine. And if you could get one, like a lot of times the ones that are the cookbooks, they're called cookbooks. No, this one looks a little PHP and MySQL. And if it says by example, those are good ones too. Probably any of these would be okay. But this one would be, let's have a look inside. Let's see the table of contents. So this book basically starts where we started today. That's why I'm saying I think you're at a point where you should be comfortable getting a book, because a lot of like the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, these books will just assume you have knowledge of that. That's why we focused on this one. So this, look, the first thing is a PHP crash course, which is basically what we did today. Even today is a extra fast crash course, right? So let's see if there's one that's by example, because or a cookbook. Because what it does is it gives you an example. MySQL cookbook, solutions and examples. See, I think this one's only SQL. You need one that looks at PHP and SQL together from novice to professional. These ones are actually pretty good. Let's see, what was the free one? No, don't do that one. Oh, here's one. But these are all. No, maybe the cookbook isn't the best bet for you guys. Maybe by example. Yeah, that's a good one right there. I don't know about you guys. I always learn so much better from example. Like, did you guys ever take math? Have you taken advanced math? They'd always show you the general form, let's say, of a formula. To me, that I never understood, or I had difficulty understanding. But when they showed me an example and took me through, it was instantaneous. And that's why I was trying to find you this. PHP and MySQL by example. Yeah, this sounds like a good one. Let's have a look at does it give us, can we see it doesn't give us a table of contents. But you know what? Ryerson actually has an excellent library. And are you guys just part-time students? Yeah? But you get no, but some of you are undergrad, right? Or continuous? But I think even you get access to the library just as a CE. So even that's a good way to just see if you like it. So I think I don't know, does your student status end today? Well, it might be worth maybe just running by the library before, after we end today. Because Ryerson actually has a really, really great library, like a lot of good stuff. And nobody ever goes. So there's always, like I always, in my classes, as long as you go like pretty much after your first class, was able to get my textbook from the library. Because no one ever thought about it. So either that or even the Toronto Public Library. Because they have a system where you can, like let's say you can order a book to your local branch, so you can actually borrow from across the whole system, and it's actually one of the largest systems in the world. So basically, my message is you don't have to pay for this. I mean, pay if you're really pressed for time, but if you search around, you can find some. And I mean, 36. That's not even that much, but it's more than nothing. So. Okay. Any other questions or anything else? I think we're gonna end at 8:30 today. I'll give you guys a little time off.
You mentioned that we sort of needed one more class and a specific class.
A class? What do you mean? Oh, one more. Basically, whatever would be covered in this book. So, okay, let's do that. Let's go to the Ryerson course calendar. So if you wanted to continue this, where do we go here? Do we go to... No, I want to see... I have to go to CE, right? Where is that? Here? Courses and programs. Subjects. Computer science, computer technology, website design and development, SQL, programming. Okay. This is the one right here I would take. I would take this. Well, okay. I would take... This you've already done. I hope you're pretty solid with that, right? This, you know what? I would maybe think about doing advanced JavaScript. So if the JavaScript in this course was really easy for you and it just snapped in, then maybe you could skip over doing advanced JavaScript. But if you struggled with JavaScript, I would take a full course in it because it is pretty important. Let's just see what's going on here. Where do I see the description? Up? Oh, in this course, document object model, manipulating, using tables and forms. I don't know. It seems a little like we kind of covered that in two classes. Yeah.
This course I took it as a class. So
Yeah.
my question is,
Oh.
the next class is about like introduction to database.
Yeah.
Are we going to go to this?
Yeah. Introduction to database? Yeah, absolutely. That's what we just did yesterday, last week. That was intro to database.
So does it go to PHP?
I don't know. If it's a purely raw database course,
It says open source programming relational database.
I don't know. That might be well, not advanced, but just more pure rather than applied. Like, I think you're more interested in applying this stuff to create websites, right? So, I mean, you can go very, very deep into database design, right? Like, you could be a database administrator, and that's all you do. But yeah. Yeah, it'll be, yeah, I think you're set up for it. It'll be difficult. It'll be more difficult than this course because it can get dry, right? Like database, you know, it's not, it can be in, I don't know. It's not like, you know, when you do web stuff, you get pretty colors and stuff that comes up and you do things and there's stuff that whizzes around and it feels like you're doing something. But sometimes when you work with database or even just raw code, it can be so much work, and then, oh, okay, there's a 2 here instead of a 3. You know, so I don't know. I would, if I were to take it, the next course that I would take would be this: PHP, MySQL, Web Design Fundamentals. So they learn to write PHP scripts, which we did a little bit. Create, modify, administer a MySQL database. We did that a tiny bit today and last week. Examine PHP syntax. We did that. Statements, variables. We didn't cover arrays. Arrays are just lists of variables. Control structures, if statements, we looked at that. Publish data on the web by connecting MySQL with PHP. That's what we just did today. But you'll be obviously doing it much more. Fun, simple, complex queries. Manipulate data, explore, relational, binary data. PHP programming. So in that case, you'll do a little more programming stuff. Like PHP is object-oriented. So we can go deep into PHP as well and talk about strictly programming. This is highly recommended. Students complete 636 and 675, or have equivalent HTML, CSS, and advanced. So that's why I said depending, because we didn't really do a ton of JavaScript in this course. We kind of skipped over it to jQuery. So that's if you weren't really comfortable with that, I would maybe take advanced JavaScript before PHP, because then you'll get a chance to be familiar with JavaScript, work on your programming a little bit more, because you'll see a lot of the stuff we did today was about programming logic, right? First check their username, then check the password, then set a variable, all this stuff, right? So that's what I would recommend. And then that's pretty much it. I mean, aside from Ajax and jQuery introduction, that's a whole course on that. Jeez, I could maybe see 2 or 3 or 4 courses maybe, but because jQuery, we already learned about jQuery. I mean, there is a little bit more to learn, but I mean, we could do Ajax and jQuery in one course, really, but one class. I would definitely do this one. A whole course in Dreamweaver, waste of time. Stay away. Because right today you should have seen how using Dreamweaver, the design view, is hopeless. Because we started doing server-side stuff. You can't do that in Dreamweaver anymore. You're SOL if you've been doing it up until now with the design view. You can use Dreamweaver to do the coding view. That's fine. Okay? But what do they even teach in this? Dreamweaver?
Is there a course you recommend for designing the site?
Human-computer interaction. So you mean not the code or anything, just the front end. Okay, so that would be, let's see. They don't seem to have anything here. Oh, let's do a, okay, so computer science, maybe in here. Okay, so here we go. If you can do this, human-computer interaction. There, the thing is this course is human-computer interaction is not specific to web technology. So concepts, blah, 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 user testing. So it's not specific to web stuff. So you may do like an interface using Visual Studio, where it's more like a tool like Azure, how we used it. So you wouldn't do any coding, and it's an HCI course is about so it's part psychology, part usability. So determining based on what you know about human psychology, how can we make a website more usable? And then it's also about user testing. So what is that? You have a design. How do we test that design to make sure our design is usable? Okay. So anything like that, human-computer interaction. Like what I do, I'm a user experience consultant. That's pretty much what I do, that human-computer interaction, right? So anything with user experience or interaction, or another term for it is information architecture. Like my PhD is in human factors engineering. That's more broad. That's looking at interfaces, not just computers, all sorts of interfaces. But so if you're interested in learning about interfaces, anything with human-computer interaction, or human factors, or user experience. But it's sort of a newish thing, which is why I don't think they'd have it as part of the comp sci, but as part of. Oh, you know what? I used to teach that course in ITM, but they stopped it. It was a really good course. Okay. Let's see here. Do we have any interface? No. See, they took this out of ITM, unfortunately. Maybe it's in. This could be in here or here, maybe. No. Oh, well, here's one. I see. Here's a human-computer interface, but it's healthcare specific. So that might be too specific. So I'm not sure if Ryerson has something for you, but yeah, basically it's difficult to pull those apart sometimes. It's difficult to pull apart interface design with HTML from HTML and CSS, right? That's why I showed you both. Like I tried to get you to do a little design, a little code, because I think, you know, I'm not an architect or anything, but I think it helps as an architect. It helps to know about construction materials, right? Because then your designs aren't so wacky and crazy, right? Because you know what the limitations are, right? As an engineer, as a designer, you can say, oh, we want to have this sweep in from here, and it's gonna, all these pages are gonna pop up, and there's gonna be animation and movement, and then the developers are gonna look at you like, what are you thinking? This is gonna take forever, and it's gonna cost an arm and a leg. But if you know about, at least know about it, your designs will be a little better, I think. Okay? Any other questions about anything? I mean, check out my YouTube page as well. Like I've taught courses like this a couple of times. So I have on my page, I have a programming course in C#. So if you want to have, so that is more pure programming. So if you had some difficulties with if statements or loops, you could look at those. So I break it down by, let's have a look here. So I have methods, variables, loops, conditional statements. And then I taught another version of this course, and it was a little more advanced. So we did much more of the PHP and MySQL stuff. And so here, this one here, this is a playlist. So this is a course I taught at Centennial, Advanced Web Applications. And so we looked at, so here, this was about, we got through this whole course in the first 4 courses, first 4 classes, and then the rest. So then I did a little bit on Photoshop and Illustrator, then media queries, which is a CSS technology I didn't get a chance to do, some advanced JavaScript like using a timer, and then here, so getting started with PHP, intro to PHP MySQL, more PHP MySQL, getting started with XML and JSON and AJAX, and then getting started with WordPress. So, between here and here, that will cover a lot of the stuff you would learn in a course. Right? So have a look here too, right? And even if not from me, there are many people that post up things, right? Now you don't always know if they're legitimate, but the good thing about coding and programming is you can try it, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? It's not like a lot of let's say I could BS a lot more easily about other things, right? If we were talking about history or philosophy or something, I could sort of, right? I could pull one over on you guys, but if I'm typing stuff here on the screen, I say, okay, a 5 is going to appear, and then a 5 doesn't appear. Right? I'm kind of, right? There's nothing I can say to BS that. Okay, so I mean, if you're watching somebody and their stuff is working, I mean, and then look at the comments too. Sometimes if the top 5 comments are "this is crap" or "don't do this," that's a good way. I mean, it's no guarantee. You could go to an institution and it's no guarantee they're going to teach you, quote, the right thing. Things change so fast. It may have been right 5 years ago, but now it's, things change. So, any other questions? Nope. Hi. Yeah, we're almost done. Yeah, I think so. I should have everything marked by the end of this weekend, and then, yeah, it should be there. And then, but I think your official mark, I don't think it's released through Blackboard. I don't think, right? It's through RAMS, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
You going through RAMS? Okay. So I think my marks have to be in before August 15th or 14th. I got to double check. So shortly after that, they'll be available on. But I'll post all your, and I'll post the rubric that I'm going to use. It's going to be pretty similar to what I have in the outline, but I think we did like one less assignment than was planned. So I'll just have to adjust the marks a little bit. But I think no one's really in jeopardy of failing or anything. I don't think so.
You mentioned about whether or not we still have access to this after the course is over.
Blackboard? Yeah, I don't know. You should for a while afterwards, at least to check your. Yeah.
I can't imagine that they aren't intending problems.
Yeah, I hope. But I was saying about the library. You might have access to the library still too, till maybe September. I don't know. Sometime. Because normally there'd be, like if this course had an exam, I think we would have an exam next week, so we should be at least good till next week. So. Okay. Any other questions?